No, it looks like we're live now. I've been doing these lockdown diaries now for, well, I've lost track of time, like most of us in the lockdown. I'm back at work today, in my kind of ghost office. It's like one of those, you ever read those stories where they find like a ship at sea that there's no people on it, and it's just sitting there. It's called a ghost ship. I think that's what they call it. But we have ghost offices. It's just whole buildings without any people in them. I think I'm like one of the only people in this entire building. So I could just do whatever I want, basically. But I am I'm at my desk. As some people know, I edit opinion pieces, or I receive them. I'm like the journalist world version of a Sherpa. I receive information. I receive submissions, and then I take the submissions part of the way up the mountain and hand them off to other Sherpas, who then lay them out and do whatever else goes on. So that they will appear in a newspaper later and appear online at some point. So, as part of my Sherpa-like responsibility, I have to, especially now that we're all in lockdown, most of this world that we work in is somehow remote. So, we have to use different layers of remote stuff like Google Drive and other things. So I have to physically, it's a little bit like remember in that movie Office Space where they have the guy that mumbles all the time, and they said, well, so what do you actually do here? And he says, well, I interface with the public, and I'm supposed to bring this stuff down to the engineers. And they say, well, do you actually physically do it? And he says, well no, I have my assistant takes them. And they say, well what do you do here? So I physically move files that I receive that I've chosen to have edited from my email to a Word document to a file inside the Google Drive in which other people remotely work on it and move it, and then I move it from the file in the Google Drive to an in-copy file to another file in which I then save it somewhere. Which, as I said, reminds me a lot of what it must be like to be a Sherpa. So, at this moment in time, I'm trying to go through a bunch of submissions and move them from point A to point B, which is really, really fun. So I'm not going to use that one. What is this? I saw today on the news that Prince Charles is already better from he was infected, and he is now better. Now, they said that he had already been in self-isolation for 7 days. I mean, I don't know how bad it must be to be in self-isolation in a palace or whatever, but there's a whole number of people now that are famous or well known that have gotten the virus. So Prince Charles, Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of Israel is also now quarantining because one of his advisors apparently was infected. Obviously Tom Hanks, Idris Elba. There's a famous football star somewhere. Actually, someone needs to create a list of those people. There's a large number of people who are celebrities who have got the virus. There's also a large number of government officials. Now, you could say that would lead you to conclude that there is a conspiracy involved in which all of those people were at a secret meeting somewhere. That's not what happened, probably. But it is interesting to follow the guidelines or lack thereof, that some of the officials seem to have followed, because it appears that although many countries have locked their citizens down, the officials themselves are still shaking hands, holding meetings, not going to the pub, but they seem to be doing things that are a bit beyond the guidelines that they have put their own citizens in, which is interesting. So that means some of these people got the virus. It's not entirely clear where or how. Most of them, luckily, have survived. They've had, in most cases, it seems mild symptoms or asymptomatic or whatever all those terms are that we hear. So I think all of these stories lead us to question, how many people have it, who will get it next, how do governments function when everyone is locked down or something. I saw that in Israel, for instance, today they concluded an Air Force exercise in which F-35s flew, Israeli F-35s flew with American F-35s. However, the pilots did not meet personally because of the pandemic. So they flew around, they spoke to each other, they landed, but they did not physically meet. And this exercise took place despite the fact that the U.S. military has put in place was some sort of stop movement order or something, because they do have a problem of infections in the military and in some places like aircraft carriers or things like that, which are kind of just giant floating petri dishes, a bit like cruises. I heard there was a cruise. I saw somewhere that there was a cruise in which the cruise ship had left port in like January, and the cruise ship was not one of the ones that got infected. It happened. Its timetable was such. There are hundreds of these cruise ships. This one's timetable had started at a place in which, I think it was in America somewhere, it was supposed to go all the way to like Bali and Sri Lanka and Micronesia and back to Australia or something. Its route happened to go so that everywhere it went, the virus or the pandemic had just all of a sudden affected that place, or that the people were really scared. So everywhere it went, it found that the ports were closed. However, apparently cruise ships are a bit like submarines. They have a lot of stuff on them so that they can be at sea for a long time. They don't run out of food like within a day or something. So even though the ship was turned away from all of these ports, by like March, it was still at sea. And the cruise ship was therefore an entirely pristine environment. I mean, it was in a sense a floating utopia, because there was no virus on it. It had never been to a port where there was virus because ports had turned it away. So that ship, unfortunately, I saw that the ship was supposed to like come back to San Francisco or something. At some point they were going to have to dock. But the people on it said that they were like living in this dream world where like the rest of the world was falling apart, but they were fine. And I was thinking, really, that ship, it could have just weathered the storm and waited out the crisis by like sailing around the world for a few years. Which by the way, it brings you to the interesting point. In the old days, when people would sign up for voyages, like Magellan or whatever, all the people that crewed that ship or ships, they would sign up for like years. Like you would agree to go on a ship. You would go. You would be gone for years. Like you'd say bye to your family. You'd come back. Your family would be like old. Half of them wouldn't be there anymore. I mean, how would you find them? They didn't have P.O. boxes and stuff. So, you would be gone for a very long time. And at the time when I used to read about things like that, you'd be like, well, why would anyone sign up to do that? Why would you sign up to go on a ship like Magellan? In Magellan's ship, only like a few dozen guys survived. Most of them died. Why would you do that? Why would you sign up to go away for years? Well, this pandemic perhaps leads us to understand why someone would do that. Because when you go and you see in those days, like, your choices in life, depending on what class you came from, were quite limited. So, but there were some places that you could have a choice. For instance, to sign up for a ship that would take you around the world for several years, or, to go to the Spice Islands, or you could sign up, for instance, to become a monk. And you say, well, yeah, but why would anyone ever want to become a monk? Yeah, but hold on a minute. If you lived in a time when there was pandemics and things like that, that would seem like a pretty good idea. Because if your choice was between, 30% of you will be dead in the next few years, or you'll be locked down. Or you could join a journey all the way around the world, or you could go live at a monastery, and monasteries have alcohol and stuff. So, monasteries, if you look at them, they're built in such a way that they can wall you off from the general public. Usually they have gardens, animals, all of the things you would want in a lockdown situation are in a monastery. The ideal place to be when you're locked down in a pandemic is a monastery. Now, this perhaps leads one to conclude that that's exactly why someone would have joined these types of things, because life was so miserable, and your chances of dying of some freakish weird disease or having a hunchback or God knows what. So you would have chosen all those things. And only today, in our world today, mostly our lives are quite good because we can go to order sushi and go drink and fly around the world. The pandemic has chiseled our lives down into this very, very small, tiny way of life in which you have so few options that you can suddenly understand through that the prism of history in which people would have said, well, yeah, I guess being press-ganged into the Navy for 2 years, or I don't know, the Roman army would have been 25 years or something. I think the Tsar's army was also 2 decades of your life. Yeah, but you'd be okay, but that's 2 decades of my life, but my other life, I'll be alive for maybe 2 years. So, now I can understand why someone would have chosen those occupations that to us seem mildly kind of ridiculous. Now, I have to go back to work. So, what is this? This person claims to be an OSINT specialist. Doesn't OSINT just means OSINT is isn't that open source intelligence? OSINT is basically, I go on Google, I see what the last person wrote, and I now know things. Yeah, okay. I don't know what that is. How can I can't possibly know. No. What is this about? I know, the coffee shop, by the way. Last time I did one of these videos, we had a coffee shop at the entrance to our building, but they took it away because apparently coffee shops are no longer an essential business. So the coffee shop is now closed. I have to make my own coffee, and I am quickly running out of things to make coffee with, which I think is perhaps more depressing than the rest of the this lockdown kind of hell, suffocating, terrible way of life that we've all been jettisoned into in the last few weeks, But whatever. I mean, what can you do? There's no choice. There was an egg shortage in Israel for the last 2 weeks, and I finally found eggs today, and that made me very happy. And I realized that's how much my life has declined. That I'm very thankful that there were eggs in the supermarket. I mean, I did not think that would make me really, really happy. I was going there. There's an area where they have eggs. They have other things there as well. It's near the milk product area. So I saw what looked like an empty box in the fridge. And I was like, there's no eggs. Again. And we only have 4 at home. And I kind of peeked over. And I was like, but there's eggs. There were 7 what do they call them? Cartridges of eggs. And I was like, oh, I'll take 1, 2, 3. And I was like, oh, no, I shouldn't hoard them. That would be wrong. And I put 1 back, and I took 2. But I almost took 3 cartons of them because I thought that, well, maybe there won't be eggs. Although, at the end of the day, you can't keep them forever. I think eggs will last like a few weeks or something. But anyway, I mean, why is there an egg shortage? There's the same number of people as last month. There are the same number of chickens. How come there ain't the same number of eggs? That doesn't make sense. It does make sense. Because people are stuck at home. And when you're in lockdown, your tendency is to eat more breakfast and eat more eggs and make more cakes. So therefore, there is an egg shortage, I expect, perhaps, not just because of exports and imports and things. Because despite the same number of chickens and the same number of people, the people are consuming more and more and more eggs, apparently. Maybe. That could be one explanation. Because there are the same number of chickens. And the same number of chickens give birth to the same number of eggs, I guess. The chickens are not stressed out by the pandemic. It's not like they're all unhappy. I mean, the chickens are locked down anyway. Their lives are already quite miserable. So their life has not changed much in terms of being locked down. In fact, we've all just become like chickens. Our lives are now reduced to lives that are closer to them. Some of us are free range if we are members of an essential working staff. Whereas others of us are just the sad old types of chickens that were kept in barns forever. And that's our lives have become more close to that in this kind of animal farm like of Orwellian existence. But anyway, I do have to go back to work. I can't just do this all day. Although I would like to. I would like to do. I think I may try to find a way to just do Facebook Live all day. And sit and talk about nothing. I think I would have been a very good writer on Seinfeld. I think that show would have appealed to me. I mean, well, writing for it, ostensibly. Although I don't exactly know how you write humor for other people, but obviously there's a whole industry in Hollywood that is involved with that. Probably that's the career choice I should have had. Been a writer, but in Hollywood, as opposed to this less than Hollywood-esque type of room. For those of you, by the way, who have not seen my beautiful office, every time I do this show, I show the office. That's my map. It's actually sideways. No, so whatever. Oh no, yeah, whatever. Those are my books. There's a prayer rug that I found. There's a window to keep people away from me. There's a door. I shouldn't keep the door open because of the pandemic. There's a very nice inspirational poster that I got from the Chinese embassy. There is a helmet for covering riots. There's a whole statue of cups now because I'm out of cups. There's another map. And then there's my wall of stuff, which includes knickknacks and prayer beads and a naked person and flags and me when I was in Abu Dhabi. And then there's my old ancient newspaper collection museum thing, and then there's my Humvee and my brick from Iraq and stuff from Egypt and bullet casings and things like that. That's my exotic office of knickknacks. I also have a small Nixon doll that I got at the Nixon Library. I don't think anyone who ever cleans this office ever wonders about some of that stuff. I could probably put all sorts of weird stuff here, and no one would ever be like, well, what the heck is that? They'd go tell their friends at home, like, well, I was cleaning this guy's office today, and there's all sorts of weird stuff that he keeps. I used to keep a bottle of whiskey in here, but then my coworkers drank it all, which I think is not really nice, to be honest. I mean, it's fine. It's good to share whiskey at work, but why take it from someone? One of them, by the way, left. And then years later, he told me, we used to drink your whiskey. And he like slapped me on the back. And I was like, yeah, but so you're the person that, but that's not really a nice thing to admit. I mean, maybe it would have been just better to keep me in the dark. Okay, have a nice day. Bye-bye.